Good day, children. I hope you're all happy. I hope you're all fine. I'm Anupreet Kaur from the Chandigarh Education Department. Children, which is the national religion of India? India does not have a national religion because India is a secular country. All Indians are allowed to practice any religion of their own choice. There is no state religion. And India is home to several religions like Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Jainism, Buddhism, and some others too. Children, who is the founder of Sikhism? Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And who is the founder of Buddhism? Gautam Buddha. How did the religions come to be spread? Largely through sermons. The pioneers of the religions would go from place to place and give sermons to people. They would enlighten the people and spread their knowledge. Today we shall study the lesson, The Sermon at Benares, from your NCERT textbook for Class 10, First Flight. In this lesson, we shall study about the early life of Gautam Buddha, his enlightenment, and his first sermon that was at Benares. A sermon is a talk on a religious or moral subject. And Gautam Buddha gave his first sermon at Benares, which is a very ancient city on the banks of river Ganga in Uttar Pradesh. Gautam Buddha was born in 563 BC and he died in 483 BC. Now, this might seem strange to you, that he was born in 563 and he died in 483. But you must remember the timeline. BC means before Christ. So Gautam Buddha was born 563 years before Christ was born. And he died in 483 years before Christ was born. And now we are in 2020. AD. AD is Anno Domini. So children, you must have studied the timelines in history, and I'm sure you know the concept of BC and Anno Domini. So all the years before Christ was born are considered as BC, and the years from his birth onwards are considered as Anno Domini. So 1 year before Christ's birth would be 1 BC. 10 years before his birth would be 10 BC. So, 483 years before his birth was 483 BC. Gautam Buddha began his life as a prince named Siddhartha Gautama in northern India. We can also say Siddhartha Gautam. He was born in northern India and he was a prince. He was not born a saint. He was born a prince. At 12, he was sent away for schooling in the Hindu sacred scriptures. And 4 years later, he returned home to marry a princess. So children, when he was only 12 years old, he had to study the sacred scriptures. Sacred scriptures are the writings which embody the laws and doctrines of religion. And after having studied for 4 years, he returned home to marry a princess. They had a son and lived for 10 years as befitted royalty. Children, royalty means people who are the kings and princes or those related to them. So he led a very luxurious life, a very grand life, which was appropriate or suitable for the royalty of those times. At about the age of 25, the prince, heretofore shielded from the suffering of the world, while out hunting, chanced upon a sick man, then an aged man, then a funeral procession, and finally a monk begging for alms. So children, till now, he had been protected from all kinds of grief and tragedy, from all kinds of sorrow. He had led a very protected life in his palace where he knew only joy and happiness. He only saw the beauty in life. It was on a hunting trip when he went out that he saw the sorrows that mankind has to go through. He was 25 years old when he saw the real suffering of life. In the first scene, he saw a sick man, a person suffering from illness. In the second scene, he saw an aged man, a person suffering from the problems of old age. Then, in the third scene, he saw a funeral procession in which a dead body was being carried to the cremation ground or to the graveyard. And in the fourth sight, he saw a monk begging for alms, a poor person who was begging for food. So he saw the sights of sickness, of old age and deterioration of the body, of death and poverty. These sights so moved him that he at once went out into the world to seek enlightenment concerning the sorrows he had witnessed. He left his house, he left all the luxuries of his palace. He left his home to go and search for the cause behind these sorrows. He went out into the world to seek enlightenment, which is a state of high spiritual knowledge, which would help him the reason for these sorrows and ways to overcome them. He wandered for 7 years and finally sat down under a peepal tree where he vowed to stay until enlightenment came. So for 7 years he just wandered around looking for some kind of an answer to the cause of the sorrows in the world. Then he sat under a peepal tree. And where was this peepal tree? In Bodh Gaya, which is in the state of Bihar. There he sat and meditated, and he vowed, he promised himself that he would not go anywhere till he got enlightenment there. So he made a solemn promise to himself that he would not move from there till he got enlightenment, till he achieved the highest level of spiritual knowledge. Enlightened after 7 days, he renamed the tree the Bodhi tree, tree of wisdom, and began to teach and to share his new understandings. At that point, he became known as the Buddha, the awakened or the enlightened. He gives a name to that peepal tree where he achieved his enlightenment. He called it the Bodhi tree, which means the tree of wisdom. And because he had been enlightened himself, people started calling him the Buddha. So this Bodhi tree is in Bodh Gaya and it is an international heritage site. It has been declared a heritage site by the UNESCO, and people from all around the world go to visit it. The Buddha preached his first sermon at the city of Benares, most holy of the dipping places on the river Ganges. That sermon has been preserved and is given here. It reflects the Buddha's wisdom about one inscrutable kind of suffering. So children, Gautam Buddha, on having achieved enlightenment, preached his first sermon in the city of Benares. And where is Benares? It is by the banks of river Ganga in Uttar Pradesh. Benares is considered as the holiest of places for bathing. People bathe in the Ganga because they consider it a holy river. They feel that bathing in the Ganga washes away their sins, and they come out of it as better people. And the sermon that Gautam Buddha gave in Benares has been preserved till now. It has been saved for generations to learn from. Today we're going to learn about that sermon. And in this sermon we will realize that Buddha was so wise, and he explains about one particular kind of suffering in this sermon of his. So this gives us a new perspective to man's unending suffering. Kissa Gautami had an only son and he died. In her grief, she carried the dead child to all her neighbors, asking them for medicine. And the people said, "She has lost her senses. The boy is dead." Children, this is such a big tragedy for a mother to lose her child. This is the greatest of tragedies for a person to bear. How does one feel when one undergoes a tragedy? One feels very grieved, and grief is an emotion which is natural to all types of loss or significant change. Although grief is unique and personal, there's a broad range of feelings and behaviors which are commonly experienced after the death of a loved one. One feels sad. One may or may not cry, but the sadness is immense. One may also feel very angry. One may feel frustrated at not being able to prevent the death of the loved one. And one also feels that one cannot exist without the loved one. So one is very confused on having lost a beloved person. Some people also feel a sense of guilt and self-reproach. So people may believe that they were not kind enough or caring enough for that person who died. And there is a state of loneliness. There are reminders throughout the day that a partner or a family member or a friend is gone. It changes one's life totally. So Kisa Gautami is undergoing all these feelings. Here, it is not just grief here, it is also a sense of disbelief and denial. She cannot understand the permanence of death. So she goes around to all her neighbors. She asks them to give her medicine with which she could save her child, some kind of a wonder drug with which she could save her child. And what did the people think about it? People felt that she had lost her senses. She had lost her ability to think clearly because the boy is dead and dead do not come back to life. At length, Kisa Gautami met a man who replied to her request. So he said, I cannot give thee medicine for thy child, but I know a physician who can. So now there is one man whom she meets who gives her hope. He said that he could not give her medicine to save her child, but he said that he knew somebody, he knew a physician, a doctor who could. And here this person has used the words thee and thy. These words mean, thee means you and thy here means your. So thee medicines that I cannot give you medicine. Thy child means your child. So this is the archaic form of language. It was used in the ancient times. Now we use words like you and your. So now this man gave her a lot of hope. And the girl said, pray, tell me, sir, who is it? And the man replied, go to Sakya Muni, the Buddha. The girl Kisa Gautami, who is filled with hope, she begs him to tell her quickly who that person was who could save her son's life. The man said that she should go to Sakya Muni, the Buddha. Gautam Buddha was a prince of the Sakya dynasty. So he was also called the Sakya Muni. Muni because he had become a saint. Kisa Gautami repaired to the Buddha and cried, Lord and Master, give me the medicine that will cure my boy. So Kisa Gautami repaired means she went to the Buddha and she asked him for medicine to cure, to save her child. The Buddha answered, I want a handful of mustard seeds. And when the girl in her joy promised to procure it, the Buddha added, the mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one has lost a child, husband, parent or friend. So children, when she asked for a wonder medicine, a wonder drug to save her child, Gautam Buddha asks her to get a handful of mustard seeds. So the girl is very happy because she says it's so easy to get mustard seeds from somebody. But there was a glitch. Gautam Buddha set a condition. He said that the mustard seeds must be taken from a place where no one had died. They must be got from a house where they had not lost their loved one. They had not lost a child, a husband, a parent or a friend. Poor Kisa Gautami now went from house to house, and the people pitied her and said, here is mustard seed, take it. But when she asked, did a son or a daughter, a father or mother die in your family? They answered her, alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief. And there was no house, but some beloved one had died in it. So when Kisa Gautami, in her hope to get mustard seeds from a house where no one had died, went from house to house, so what did the people do? They offered to give her the mustard seeds. But once she asked them if anyone had died in their family, be it a son or a daughter, a father or a mother. So what did those people say? They said, alas, means sadly, very few people are living. The number of dead people in a family are much more than the living people, because many generations had died before them. So they said, do not remind us of our deepest griefs. They did not want to talk about the dead because talking about the dead in their family made them very sad. So she did not find a single house in which a beloved one, a loved one had not died. Kisagotmi became very weary and hopeless and sat down at the wayside watching the lights of the city as they flickered up and were extinguished again. At last the darkness of the night reigned everywhere, and she considered the fate of men, that their lives flicker up and are extinguished again. And she thought to herself, how selfish am I in my grief. Death is common to all. Yet in this valley of desolation there is a path that leads him to immortality, who has surrendered all selfishness. Kisagotmi went from house to house, but did not find a single place where they had not lost a loved one. She became tired and hopeless. In this state of hopelessness, she sat on the wayside and watched the city lights. The lights flickered and then were extinguished. She compared the situation of those lights with the fate of men. She said human beings also first live their lives, the lives are flickered up, and then they die. She realized that there was a cycle of birth and death that men had to go through, that men are mortal. And then she thought to herself, how selfish I am in my grief. She realized that she was being selfish. She realized that everyone died, that death is common to all. Everybody and everything which is born will definitely die, will eventually be extinguished. She had not realized this earlier when she went asking people to help her to make her son come back to life again. But when Buddha sent her to get mustard seeds from a house where no one had died, she realized that she was not the only one who was suffering. She was not the only one who had lost a beloved person. Everybody had been through this kind of a grief, because everybody dies and everybody loses a loved one. She says, in this valley of desolation, means in this world which is filled with grief, there is a path that leads him to immortality, who surrendered all selfishness. So she says there is a way to deal with this grief, to deal with the loss. She says the one who become immortal are the ones who have covered a path which is free from all worldly pleasures. She says the only way to deal with grief is to give up these attachments, to be detached from all worldly pleasures, to be detached from all kinds of relationships. Only then can one attain moksha or nirvana or salvation and be considered immortal. The Buddha said, the life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain, for there is not any means by which those that have been born can avoid dying. After reaching old age, there is death. Of such a nature are living beings. So Gautam Buddha said that men are mortal, our lives are transient, lives are brief, and they are full of troubles, of suffering and pain. But one has to learn to deal with this. And everything which is born will die. There is no way we can avoid dying. After old age, death will surely come. But children, sadly, death can come even at a very young age. There is no fixed age for dying. One can die at any time. But one has to accept that since one is born, one will definitely die. Some die early, some die late. So this is the nature of living beings. As ripe fruits are early in danger of falling, so mortals when born are always in danger of death. As all earthen vessels made by the potter end in being broken, so is the life of mortals, both young and adult. Both those who are fools and those who are wise, all fall to the power of death. All are subject to death. So again, Gautam Buddha reinforces that everyone dies, whether they are young or old, whether they are wise or foolish. So no matter how wise a person is, even that person has to die. No matter how smart one is, one cannot cheat death. Everyone will die. And here he compares the life of human beings with that of ripe fruit. He says when the fruit is ripe, it can fall at any time. So when mortals are born, when human beings are born, or even when mortal animals and birds, when they are born, they're always in the danger of death. One can die at any time, be it at young age or at middle age or at old age. Then again he compares human life to that of earthen vessels, which are made by the potters. These earthen vessels will break. Similarly, human beings will die. Of those who overcome by death, depart from life, a father cannot save his son, nor kinsmen their relations. Mark, while relatives are looking on and lamenting deeply, one by one mortals are carried off, like an ox that is led to the slaughter. So the world is afflicted with death and decay. Therefore the wise do not grieve, knowing the terms of the world. So he says that everyone is parted from their loved ones. He says, a father cannot save his son. All the relatives, the kinsmen cannot save. You see people crying for their loved ones. They're lamenting, they're expressing their sadness and sorrow while their beloved die and are being carried off to the graveyards or to the crematoriums. So now he compares the human life with that of an ox. He says, like, it is inevitable for an ox. The ox is taken to the slaughterhouse to be killed for food. So even he is going to die. Similarly, man will also die. A man's remains are also carried off to be extinguished either in the flames or to be buried. So the world is afflicted with suffering, with death and decay. It is affected with disease, with pain, with decay. Therefore, the wise people know this. The wise people understand that there is no point in grieving when we know that life is transient. So one who knows the truth does not grieve his loss. So who is the one who knows the truth? What is the truth that Gautam Buddha is talking about here? The truth of life and death. So who knows this truth? The wise people. They know it and they understand it. That since they're born, they will die. There is no point in grieving about it. Not from weeping nor from grieving will anyone obtain peace of mind. On the contrary, his pain will be the greater and his body will suffer. He will make himself sick and pale, yet the dead are not saved by his lamentation. So he says, no matter how much one cries, how much one grieves, one cannot bring the beloved back to life. One cannot get any kind of peace of mind. Rather, all this crying and howling and grieving, it makes a person ill. All this crying and grieving multiplies the suffering of a person. It deepens the suffering of the person. He who seeks peace should draw out the arrow of lamentation and complaint and grief. He who draws out the arrow and has become composed will obtain peace of mind. He who has overcome all sorrow will become free from sorrow and be blessed. So Gautam Buddha says that one who wants peace should not cry or complain. One should not be filled with sorrow. One should be able to move past the sorrow. One should be able to detach oneself from the sorrows and the griefs of this world. Only then can one be at peace. Only then can one achieve moksha or nirvana or salvation. Let's do an activity now. Let's have a quiz. Now I will give you 4 options for each question and you have to tell me which is the correct one. Buddha's original name was Siddhartha Gautam, Sri Ratna Gautam, Siddhartha Gautami, Jayadratha Gautam.
It was Siddhartha Gautam.
That's correct. He was called Buddha because he was old, enlightened, born wise, or well-read.
Enlightened.
That's the correct answer. Gautam Buddha was born in 563 BC, 483 BC, 600 BC, or 483 AD?
Gautam Buddha was born in 563 BC.
That's correct. He was born into the family of Brahmins, traders, kings, or farmers.
Kings.
That's right, he was a prince. During his early years, he led a lonely life, protected life, tough life, or boring life.
He led a protected life.
That is correct. The sight that changed him was that of a sick man, an old man, a funeral procession, or all of the above.
All of the above.
That's the correct answer. Gautam Buddha got enlightened under a banyan tree, a peepal tree, a mango tree, or an oak tree.
Gautam Buddha got enlightened under a peepal tree.
That's correct. After his enlightenment, he renamed the tree as the Bodhi tree, the Buddha tree, the Gautam tree, or the Siddharth tree.
The Bodhi tree.
That's correct. The Bodhi tree means the tree of wisdom. On being enlightened, Gautam Buddha went back to his palace, or began to preach, or started writing a book, or became the king.
He began to preach.
That's correct. Because he wanted to share his knowledge. He wanted to spread the knowledge that he had gained through his enlightenment. Kisa Gautami asked Buddha to cure her son, teach her son, bring her son back to life, make her his disciple.
Kisa Gautami asked him to bring her son back to life.
That's correct. Her son had died and she wanted Buddha to bring him back to life. Buddha asked Kisa Gautami to get mustard seeds, sesame seeds, flax seeds, or sunflower seeds.
Mustard seeds.
That's correct. He wanted her to get a handful of mustard seeds. The condition imposed upon the source of seeds was that they should be taken from a house of the rich, a house of a poor person, a family where no one had ever died, or a shopkeeper.
A family where no one had ever died.
That's correct. Kisa Gautami was weary and hopeless because no one wanted to give her mustard seeds. There were no mustard seeds in that region. There was no family who had not lost a loved one, or she had lost the mustard seeds.
There was no such family who had not lost a loved one.
That's correct. The flickering lights made Kisa Gautami realize men are mortal, death is common to all. She was being selfish in her grief, or all of the above.
All of the above.
That's correct. Very well done, child. Let's do another activity. I would like you to match the words in column A with their meanings in column B. The words or the phrases in column A are chanced upon, enlightenment, sermon, inscrutable, desolation, mortal, afflicted, lamentation, wow. The meanings are a state of high spiritual knowledge, a religious or moral talk, came across by chance, deep sorrow, something which cannot be understood, affected, expression of sorrow, one who is bound to die, and solemn promise. Now I'll speak the words and you tell me the meanings. Chanced upon.
Came across by chance.
That's correct. Enlightenment.
A state of high spiritual knowledge.
Absolutely right. Sermon.
A religious or moral talk.
That's correct. Inscrutable.
Something which cannot be understood.
That's correct. Desolation.
Deep sorrow.
Yes. Mortal.
One who is bound to die.
Yes. Afflicted.
Affected.
That's right. Lamentation.
Expression of sorrow.
Right. Wow.
Solemn promise.
That's correct. Very well done. Let's do another activity. I would like you to fill in the blanks using the correct option. Kisa Gautami dashed, weary and hopeless. The options are became, become, becoming.
Became.
That's correct. She sat down at the wayside, dashed the lights of the city. The options are watch, watched, watching.
Watching.
That's right. The lights flickered up and were dashed again. The options are extinguish, extinguished, extinguishing.
Extinguished.
That's correct. At last, the darkness dashed everywhere. The options are rain, rained, raining.
Rain everywhere.
That's correct. She considered the fate of men, that their lives dash up everywhere and are extinguished again. The options are flicker, flickered, flickering.
Flicker.
That's correct, flicker. She dashed that death is common to all. The options are realize, realized, and realizing.
She realized that death is common to all.
That's correct. Very well done, child. Let's do another activity. This text is written in an old-fashioned style, for it reports an incident more than 2 millennia old. Now, I would like you to rephrase the following words and phrases in the current language, or as you understand them. For example, the word thee means you. Thy means your. So the phrase is, give thee medicine for thy child. How would you rephrase it?
Give your medicine for your child.
That's correct. That is very good. Pray tell me.
Pray means please. Please tell me.
Good. Kisa repaired to the Buddha.
Repaired, we can also call it went. Kisa went to Buddha.
That's correct. Kisa went to the Buddha. There was no house, but someone had died in it.
There was no house where someone had not died.
That's correct. Kinsmen.
Relatives.
That's correct. Mark.
Mark means pay attention to or notice.
That's right. Very well done. I would like you to do another activity. I would like you to write a paragraph on this topic. When a friend or a loved one is experiencing grief, how can you help that person cope with it? I hope you have understood the sermon that Buddha gave at Benares, children. He conveyed that pain and suffering are an integral part of life. Death is common to all. Everything that is born must die. Men are mortal. Children, we have to learn to deal with our pain, our suffering. We have to learn to cope with it. There is no point lamenting and crying because no one who dies comes back to life. We have to learn to cope with the loss, to bear with the loss, and that we must do with strength and fortitude. Children, we should also be supportive to our friends who are going through any kind of pain and suffering. We should be a good support system. We should be like pillars to them so that they're able to deal with their loss and bear the grief. Together, we can all overcome the pain that we're going through, because in life, pain and suffering come, but with it come good times too. We should look forward to the good times, rather make life beautiful for each other, just by being with each other. Now we come to the end of this lesson. We shall meet again with another lesson another time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and enjoy learning.